Times recently have been tough, but how do you actually lead through tough times? I had the opportunity to speak to the former CEO of Honeywell, David Cote, and he shared some really valuable lessons and tips for what you can do to lead your team and your organization through tough times. Before I share David's important lessons, please remember to subscribe to this channel if you find content like this helpful, useful, and valuable, and I greatly appreciate it. David Cote is the former CEO of Honeywell, and he took the company from $20 billion to a valuation of over $120 billion before he actually retired fairly recently. And when David and I spoke, I asked him, what is it that you do to lead through tough times? And he shared a couple really important pieces of advice with me. The first piece of advice from David is don't panic. This is crucial because, when COVID happened, Black Lives Matter, just the madness that's happening in the world, the temptation is always to freak out, to panic. We gotta move, we gotta change careers, we gotta relocate. People freak out. And especially if you're a leader inside of a company, you might panic. I don't know what to do, what should we do? We all have been there, we know what that's like. But when you panic, you start to make rash decisions, you start to not think clearly, you start to make decisions purely based on emotion, not based on logic. This is the same thing, for example, when the stock market goes up or down. When the stock market goes down, what happens? A lot of people tend to panic. They sell all their shares and they end up actually losing money. We saw this firsthand during COVID-19, where the market was going up, COVID happened, the market plummeted, and now look at where we are. The market has rebounded quite a bit. So if you were to panic when the market was going down during COVID and you sold everything, you probably ended up losing money. But if you held on strong, if you didn't panic, you just kind of stood the course, chances are you ended up being just fine. So this is kind of a parallel with David's piece of advice. Don't panic, don't freak out, because that is not when you are going to make the best decisions that you need to make for yourself, for your team, and for your company. The second piece of advice from David is to make sure that you are constantly thinking independently. This, I think, goes very much in hand with don't panic, because you need to remember that you have to think for yourself. I think it was a stand-up comedian, maybe it was Dane Cook, who said you have to be a think for yourselfer. And sometimes other people around you are going to tell you what you should do, how you should think. They're going to tell you what they're doing in their companies, what they're doing on their teams. And sometimes it's very easy to latch onto those other ideas, onto those other perspectives, onto those other opinions. But you still need to remember to maintain a clear mind, to think independently, and to think for yourself. This is not just true for business in general, but also in life. I remember, for example, when I wanted to move to the Bay Area 15, 16 years ago, and everybody would say, Jacob, you're crazy, you're never gonna be able to afford to live in the Bay Area, don't do it. But I thought independently. I threw all my clothes in my car, I drove up, and here I am in the Bay Area 15 years later. And chances are my career, my life would have ended up very, very differently had I done what everybody else wanted me to do, had I thought in the same way that everybody else was thinking. So you need to remember that during tough times, during times of crisis or tragedy, you still have to think for yourself. Think independently, be a think for yourselfer. The third piece of advice that David gave me is never forget to put the customer first. Even during tough times, guess what? Your customers are going through tough times, and you as an organization and as a leader need to remember to put your customers first. And I would also add to this, put your employees first. Put your customers and employees first. You have your internal customers, which are your employees, and you have your external customers, the people who are buying from you. And the reason why this is so important is because it's during times of crisis, it's during times of tragedy, of stress, of growth, that you're really gonna know, are you there for your employees? Are you there for your customers? It's easy to treat your customers, it's easy to treat your employees well when things are going well. When the company's making a lot of money, you're profitable, everything's fantastic, it's easy to treat everyone well. But when things are tough, that is the true sign of a leader. That is the true sign of an organization that's willing to stand behind its customers, to stand behind its employees. So don't just focus on how you treat people while things are going well, but remember to double down on those efforts, especially during tough times. The fourth piece of advice that David gave me is be thinking about the recovery even when you're in the middle of a recession. I talked to another CEO, Judy Marks, the CEO of Otis Elevator Company, and she told me the same thing. During COVID, right now, she's telling all of her team members, get ready for when things open up. And everybody's saying, well, Judy, we don't know when things are gonna open up and things aren't quite there yet. And Judy's response was, not yet, and I don't know exactly when things are gonna open up, but when they do, we need to be ready to go. And she gave me the analogy of kind of like being on the starting line of a race, and everybody's ready to go. And as soon as that gun goes off telling you that the race is ready, you have to be ready to go full speed. So if you're constantly just worried about the recession, the negativity, where you're at now, then when things do get back and things are up and running again, you're gonna be very much behind the curve. And so I love this piece of advice from David, and it's something that Judy inside of her company is doing as well. Even during tough times, be thinking about and planning for the recovery. I also think this is really fantastic advice for us as individuals. This is something that I have been practicing in my life and in my business as well. Times have been very tough during COVID, but during that time, I wasn't just sitting around wallowing. I was thinking about when things do get back to normal, how am I gonna put myself out there more? How am I gonna create better content? What sort of videos am I gonna be doing? Planning, strategizing, just being ready so that when things are ready to go, you are at the starting line and you are the first one ready to take off. So again, even during tough times, even during a recession, you always need to be thinking about the recovery so that you're gonna be ready to go when the time is right. So those are the 4 pieces of advice from David Cote, the former CEO of Honeywell. And this is how he recommends you can lead and how you can think about leading during tough times. Hopefully you found that advice useful and valuable, because if it worked for David running a multi-billion-dollar company with thousands of employees around the world, it can definitely work for you as well. And yes, this is Popping Einstein. I wore him in another video and I got a lot of comments about it. So Popping Einstein is making a return, and I can't do it as well as Einstein, but you get the idea. You'll probably see him again in other videos in the future. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and if you want more content just like this, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, my wife and I have a brand new podcast where we talk about entrepreneurship and how you can become your own boss. If you want to learn what you need to do, you can check us out at byobpodcast.com. That's BYOB, Be Your Own Boss, podcast.com.